People are familiar. They work in an office. They live in a home. They go to restaurants. They understand retail. People may think of industrial and they think it's dirty. I think of smokestacks and big trucks. And that's what I thought when I first met Joel. He said, I'm in industrial real estate. And I said, I don't know anything about that class. He said, not many people do. Okay. So I feel like I've squeezed in, well, I've already talked about that. I've taken the role of probably 4 different jobs. Okay, from the property management to acquisitions to investor relations and brokerage. And it's been super intensive for me. So it's been a very steep learning curve coming from somebody who really didn't know much about the business. And it's been great, though, from a learning perspective, meeting brokers and doing that side of the business, which I haven't really talked much about. But I have to develop a lot of those relationships as well. An industrial building is a tool for a business. A business needs this building in order to store their materials, to make their products, they need a certain amount of office space for their staff, and it's usually 10 to 20%, maybe less office space to warehouse space. Ceiling height's very important in an industrial building. Businesses have racking, okay, big metal structures where they keep their products stored. And the higher the ceiling, the more that they can stack up. And then obviously loading docks where trucks come back in and they load up the product and they pull out. The more loading docks you have, the more efficient the process may be. So when we're looking at industrial properties, we're looking at a good office to warehouse ratio, high ceilings, more docks, and I think it's true for any commercial property. The amount of parking plays a big role. We see buildings where there's parking lined up on the street. That might actually be a good indication for me to go and pay them a visit and say, hey, you might have a parking problem. You think about possibly expanding or making a move at some point in the future. So I think that from start to finish is a good rundown of what industrial building is. Number 1, cold calling. A building owner may not want to use a broker, may feel funny about putting themselves out there and advertising their business. So maybe they'd rather talk to us in the first place and, do a direct deal and, have that conversation before they even, decide to market it. We look for properties anywhere from 10,000 probably to 100,000 square feet. We're small and medium size, what's called infill properties that are located close to transportation, like an airport or rail yards or big trucking centers. We look for obviously properties with enough parking, with a high parking ratio, high ceilings, lots of docks. We already mentioned that. So those 2 methods, the cold calling and boots on the ground, are, I'd say, our secret sauce. That's the best way to find deals for us. And that's how we found them in the past, and making those relationships. And who knows, I've made hundreds of relationships with building owners and business owners. They may call tomorrow. I actually got a call yesterday from one, a great building that I'm going to be seeing next week, just based on a visit that I made last year. And he had my card and he called me up. Brokers, I've made quite a few relationships with brokers, and one actually stands out. It's actually another good story. I was new to the business, and brokers are competing with each other. Some of them were short with me, didn't want to give me the time, and I met a man who was super respectful towards me And he said, I'm going to teach you a few things, and I want you to walk around with me. And I really appreciate that. And it really left an impression for me. I hired him to represent one of our buildings because I remembered how well he treated me, and I wanted to give something back to him. And he did a fantastic job. He leased it up for us, and I wouldn't hesitate to give him another building in the future. So it's important that we treat each other with respect in the brokerage community, because you never know if somebody's going to pay it back to you. So I'm sort of just scratching the surface on my relationships with some of these people, but I'm seeing the way that everybody handles themselves differently, and it leaves an impression. There's a difference, though, between somebody like me, who's an investor, and somebody who might be a user. A user is a business who's going to be buying the building for their use. So they're buying that building as a tool for their business. Users will pay a premium for the building versus an investor like me. So a broker is going to be more reluctant to do a deal with me than he or she would be to do a deal with a user, because a user will be paying that premium for the building. Whereas I might buy a vacant building and have to lease it up later. A user is going to fill it right away, and so they're paying more for it.